In a jaw-dropping turn of events, Canada is poised for a seismic shift in its trade dynamics. Imagine this: Ontario has just announced a staggering 25% surcharge on electricity exported to the United States, amounting to a colossal $110 billion trade maneuver. This bold retaliation comes as President Trump doubles down on tariffs for Canadian aluminum and steel, leaving Canadians and Americans alike on edge. But what triggered this dramatic escalation? Will it spark an all-out energy war? As tensions rise, Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, has made a striking announcement. This isn't just a negligible tax, it's a powerful statement regarding Canada's resilience against U.S. trade policies. Affected households in states like Minnesota, New York, and Michigan could see an extra $100 on their electricity bills monthly. This move is meant to generate substantial revenue for Ontario while making a clear statement about trade relations. The question lingers: can Canada and the U.S. weather this storm of economic retaliations? The stakes are monumental. What does this mean for the ordinary Canadian and American citizen? Ford's government insists that these tariffs will ultimately reduce costs for Ontario taxpayers. However, the repercussions run deeper, as the electricity surcharge could destabilize energy supplies on both sides of the border. As Prime Minister Mark Carney navigates this volatile situation, is he prepared for the challenges that lie ahead? Will this tension evolve into a transformative policy shift for Canada, or will it ignite an uncontrollable rivalry? As talks of further negotiations and increased tariffs swirl like a storm, Ontario has signaled its readiness to escalate the surcharge, potentially hurting American consumers and disrupting the interconnected power grid. Voices from Minnesota and Michigan echo concern over rising utility bills, while political analysts speculate on the long-term effects of these tariffs. Can the unity between these powerful neighbors hold, or will they spiral into conflict fueled by pride and economic interests? This situation can feel like a high-stakes chess match. With every decision, the pieces are moved, and the outcomes change. Each day brings new threats from President Trump, but Canada, under Carney's leadership, is committed to keeping its integrity intact. Will Canada's retaliatory measures force the United States to reconsider its hardline stance? Or will they simply escalate tensions further? Charge your thoughts, because we're just getting started in this gripping saga of power, trade, and the pursuit of respect. What unfolds next could change the landscape of North American relations forever. In light of escalating trade frictions, the province of Ontario has decided to impose a staggering 25% surcharge on electricity sold to the United States. This bold move comes as a direct response to President Donald Trump's tariffs on Canadian goods, underscoring the increasing tension between these neighboring nations. But what might this mean for the average American household? With the new electricity surcharge, approximately 1.5 million homes in states like Minnesota, New York, and Michigan could see their utility bills soaring by an estimated $100 each month. Premier Doug Ford, expressing remorse for American citizens caught in the middle, pointed a finger squarely at Trump's administration, stating that the trade war was a result of one man's decisions. The financial implications are staggering: an annual burden of $110 billion on U.S. electricity imports from Canada. Ford's statements reveal a desire to foster a sturdy relationship between the two nations, building on shared strengths rather than focusing on weaknesses. He emphasized the importance of understanding and collaboration, even as Ontario cuts ties with American alcohol products and bans U.S. companies from local government contracts. This initiative reflects a broader pushback against Trump's tariffs, with Ontario following the federal government's lead in imposing retaliatory measures valued at $30 billion. The Ontario government has instructed its energy ministry to implement this surcharge through a newly created directive. This mandates any generator selling electricity across the border to add a surcharge identified as a tariff response charge. This mechanism is designed to collect revenue that Ontario anticipates will amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars monthly. But what's even more striking is the flexibility Ontario retains regarding this charge, which can shift in response to U.S. government actions, showcasing their readiness to pivot quickly in this turbulent trade landscape. However, states like Minnesota and Michigan are already reacting to the implications of these changes. Officials are raising concerns over the impact on energy reliability and costs. In Michigan, the electricity grid stability is crucial, particularly due to the interconnected nature of the energy systems. A disruption could leave both Canadians and Americans vulnerable to significant failures in service. Governor Kathy Hochul of New York is also on high alert, initiating a review of potential cost increases resulting from these tariffs. The tensions indicate that the path ahead is fraught with uncertainty. Trump's harsh criticisms of Canada, branding the country a tariff abuser, reflect escalating animosity, raising the stakes even higher. Ford's commitment to maintaining the surcharge signals that Ontario is prepared to weather the storm and fight back. As Ontario navigates this trade turmoil, the role of Canada's newly appointed Prime Minister Mark Carney comes into sharper focus. How will he lead the nation through this storm? What strategies will he employ to ensure Canada's economic stability amidst ever-shifting political landscapes? The unfolding story promises to be both riveting and critical for North American relations, raising essential questions about the future of trade, diplomatic ties, and economic resilience. With Carney at the helm, will Canada emerge stronger from these escalating tensions? Or will the continual back and forth put both nations on precarious ground? Trade tensions in North America have reached a boiling point. In the wake of Donald Trump's tariffs announced earlier in March, Canada's patience is running thin. Ontario's new Prime Minister has already made waves by imposing a staggering 25% surcharge on electricity exported to the United States. This bold move, amounting to an eye-watering $110 billion, threatens to reshape not just Ontario's power market but also the entire geopolitical landscape of North America. Imagine the shockwaves rippling through the economy as Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, reacts to Trump's relentless tariff threats. With each announcement from the White House, anxiety levels rise. The tariff hiking drama is now at the center stage, with Ford instituting this surcharge in retaliation for Trump's dual tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel. Every day brings new uncertainty, creating a cascade of questions. How will this impact everyday Canadians? With electricity prices potentially skyrocketing, the stakes couldn't be higher. As the media buzzes, Ford's announcement that the surcharge could be adjusted based on U.S. action shows Ontario's readiness for a tit-for-tat. The sound of electricity flowing crosses borders, whispering of vulnerability in both nations. Could this be the beginning of the end for the free trade that once tied these two countries together? States in the U.S. are reacting swiftly. Minnesota's leadership believes that the tariff's impact will be minimal. However, Governor Tim Walz is quick to emphasize that the American people shouldn't suffer for mistakes made by a single individual. It's madness, he exclaims, as utility costs soar much like the sentiments of the struggling populace. Meanwhile, Michigan is on edge, its power grid intricately intertwined with Canadian supply. If disruptions occur, we expose ourselves to vulnerabilities, warns a Michigan official, the tension palpable in his voice. In New York, Governor Kathy Hochul orders a review to assess the impact, highlighting the uncertainty looming over families and businesses. These tariffs destabilize everything, she states firmly. Trump's reaction to Ontario's surcharges adds another layer. He derisively labels Canada a tariff abuser, questioning the very essence of the relationship. They don't need Canada's resources anymore, he insists, as he readies his response. But will this enmity drive both nations into economic turmoil? As Ontario indicates it might trim its hydroelectric output, Premier Ford boldly extends an invitation to other provinces. Alberta, this is the moment for you to act. But Premier Danielle Smith staunchly rejects any ideas that could harm Alberta's economy, insisting such actions are not an option. Interestingly, with rising energy demands and environmental implications, understanding the new Prime Minister Mark Carney's approach is vital. Having recently assumed leadership of the Liberal Party, Carney is positioned to navigate a minefield. With the U.S. spiraling into chaotic trade policies, he recognizes, Canada will never be just another state in America. As his message resonates, he makes a vow, we will uphold our tariffs until we earn respect. but as tensions simmer, a sudden twist looms. What unexpected action will Carney take next, and how will it reshape not only the energy market but the bond between the nations? The clock is ticking. In the midst of escalating trade tensions, a shocking move unfolds as Ontario, under its new leadership, declares a retaliatory electricity tariff against the United States. With the backdrop of Donald Trump's heavy-handed tariffs, the stakes have never been higher for North American relations. This strategic maneuver by Ontario's Premier Doug Ford stirs both intrigue and turmoil. As if in a high-stakes chess game, Ontario imposed a staggering 25% surcharge on electricity exported to the U.S. This bold action could potentially reshape the energy landscape and reignite economic debates throughout the continent. Why would Ontario risk such a drastic move, and what could it mean for everyday folks in Minnesota or Michigan? The electricity flowing to 1.5 million homes could suddenly surge in cost, putting an added strain on bills and generating tension at kitchen tables across America. Amid the political storm, Ford's ultimatum to the U.S. is about more than just electricity, it's about asserting Ontario's power on the world stage. "I feel for the American people," he stated, highlighting the unfortunate ripple effect of U.S. policies. With this tariff, the province may rake in an estimated revenue of $300,000 to $400,000 monthly, money Ford claims will ease Ontario residents' electricity bills. However, this raises the question, is this retaliation truly justifiable, or is it a dangerous escalation? Meanwhile, American officials express alarm. Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz condemns Trump's trade war, emphasizing that the first victims are ordinary citizens reeling from rising utility bills. "We need to end this madness," he insists, voicing a sentiment echoed by many. Similarly, Michigan's energy officials worry about the implications on their already interconnected power grid, where disruptions could send shockwaves throughout the region. Will the shared reliance on electricity become a liability in these turbulent times? And then there's New York's Governor Kathy Hochul, who declares an immediate review of potential cost increases stemming from these tariffs. "These federal tariffs were crafted in secret," she complains, "and have destabilized our markets." Trump's reaction? Harsh and dismissive, labeling Canada a tariff abuser and claiming that the U.S. no longer needs its northern neighbors' resources. How will Trudeau's successor, Mark Carney, respond to this barrage of confrontations? Stepping into this tumultuous arena is the newly elected Prime Minister Mark Carney. His leadership marks a pivotal moment as he prepares to confront the chaotic tide of tariffs and trade policies emanating from D.C. With nearly 86% backing, Carney is set to redefine Canada's position on the world stage. Can he navigate these stormy waters effectively, or will his inexperience in direct political conflict hinder his strategic ambitions? And just as tensions escalate, an unexpected twist emerges. Canada's response isn't merely combative, it's transformational. Carney assures that all tariff revenues will funnel back into protecting Canadian workers, fueling initiatives to strengthen the economy. His vision? To establish new trade corridors and elevate Canada into an energy powerhouse, irrespective of U.S. whims. Is this the dawn of a new era for Canada, or merely a desperate bid to survive? With every tactical confrontation, the energy of the conversation crackles like a live wire. Will Ontario's gamble pay off? As Ford hints at possibly reducing hydroelectric power output to exert further pressure, Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith stands resolute, refusing to entertain the idea of an export tax. This is self-destructive, she argues, raising alarms over job losses. Tension simmers, and questions linger. How far will both sides go, and what will be the long-term implications of this tit-for-tat? In a world of economic chess, who will make the next move, and at what cost? Tensions were brewing like a storm gathering strength in the skies. When tariffs were slapped on Canadian goods by President Trump, the landscape of North America shifted profoundly. Canada, led by its new Prime Minister Mark Carney, was about to retaliate. In an announcement that sent shockwaves through many households, Ontario declared a staggering 25% tariff on electricity exports to the United States. Why did this happen? Less than a month into Carney's leadership, Ontario's government seized the moment to defend Canadians, specifically targeting the U.S. market where a significant portion of their exports flowed. This decision translated to a potential annual burden of $110 billion on electricity imports from Canada for the U.S. Premier Doug Ford made a bold statement: "We need to respond decisively. It's time for Canada to show its strength." However, the response from the White House was equally fierce. Trump's reaction was swift and cutting. He labeled Canada as a tariff abuser and insisted America would not subsidize their neighbor's economy anymore. This led to an ominous question: could the economic rift widen even further? Amidst this, Ford emphasized that the average American household might see monthly electricity bills soar by $100. As electricity flowed between the two nations like veins in a body, the concern grew: what would happen to the interconnected power grid? Will any disruptions leave citizens vulnerable? With every announcement and every tariff, it seemed as if the very fabric of trade was unraveling. Meanwhile, across the border in Minnesota, the ripple effects were noted, but not feared. Governor Tim Walz downplayed it, stating that Ontario's tariffs would have minimal impact. The American public, already under siege by escalating utility costs, was growing restless. Governor Kathy Hochul of New York ordered an immediate review of energy policies, sensing the upturn in costs could suffocate local economies. In a surprising flashback, Carney recalled his tenure as head of pivotal financial institutions during turbulent periods, a profession that demanded resolve. "I remember the sound of shuffling papers in stuffy boardrooms as I tried to stabilize economies," Carney reflected. Now, he was on the front lines of a different battlefield. As trade talks hung in the balance, what was Carney's next move? Would he act to safeguard Canadian interests or escalate the tension? The echoes of a trade war reverberated louder, drawing on the wisdom of both history and circumstance. As fresh tariffs loomed, the stage was set for a confrontation between two powerful neighbors in a high-stakes game of economic chess. In his inaugural speech, Carney declared, "Canada will never be part of America. We did not ask for this conflict, but we are ready." The question now stands: how would he transform these words into actions that would resonate through the halls of power on both sides? As he positioned himself to fight for respect and fair trade, the world watched, holding its breath. Where would this economic saga lead next? In a gripping tale of economic chess, Canada faces a turning point in its trade relations with the United States. After President Donald Trump enacted tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel, Ontario's sense of restraint shattered. A storm brewed as Ontario Premier Doug Ford, in mere days into Canada's new Prime Minister's term, struck back with a staggering 25% tariff on electricity exports to the U.S. This would mark a seismic shift in trade dynamics and could send shockwaves across the North American economy. Can you imagine the frustration felt on both sides of the border as tensions rise? The midday announcement echoed with urgency: Ontario would be charging the U.S. an additional charge, sending a clear message: enough is enough. This sudden escalation screamed devastation, potentially adding an extra $100 to the monthly bills for over 1 million American homes relying on Ontario's electricity. A total annual burden of $110 billion loomed over U.S. markets, a hefty price that forced many to hold their breaths. The question pulses: how will the new figure on Canada's political stage, Prime Minister Mark Carney, steer his country through this tempest? As chaos enveloped trade discussions, Premier Ford made a bold claim that resonated with his constituents. He took aim at Trump, declaring the American people innocent victims in this escalating trade war, yet pointing fingers at the White House. The sound of clattering pots and pans echoed across kitchens in Minnesota and Michigan, angry citizens reacting to rising utility costs, feeling the pinch of a war they never chose. With figures rising, Ford seized the opportunity to assert Ontario's position in the international marketplace while also addressing internal concerns. He sought to bolster Ontario's economy, hinting at possible retaliatory measures against American products, leading to an unforeseen twist. Will this move put the American economy in a stranglehold? Critics screamed forth from Minnesota, while voices from Michigan echoed uncertainty about their power grid reliability. As political chess pieces shifted, Carney braced himself for a confrontation unlike any seen before. His promise to build new international trade corridors emerged like a beacon against the encroaching darkness of tariffs and tensions amplified by Trump's unpredictability. Will the people rally behind this bold new leadership? As anxious families grapple with soaring costs and a rapidly changing landscape, they find themselves caught in the undertow of a trade war that threatens to engulf them all. What will be the aftermath of this power struggle in the North? In the previous segment, we explored how Mark Carney, the new Canadian Prime Minister, faces intense scrutiny from political opponents. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre accused him of lacking transparency over his financial interests. Carney struck back, warning of the potential repercussions if Poilievre undermines the Bank of Canada during a crucial economic period. The electricity price hike imposed by Ontario threatens not only bilateral relations but also the stability of the global energy market. As Ontario unveils a staggering 25% electricity surcharge on exports to the United States, a fierce battle for dignity and respect ignites. Prime Minister Mark Carney, wielding the power of a national leader, faces accusations of hidden agendas from his opponents. Will his past as a crisis manager guide him deftly through this political storm, or will it be his downfall? The atmosphere crackles with tension as Carney articulates a fierce resolve. He declares a commitment to retaliatory tariffs until the U.S. acknowledges Canada's sovereignty, transforming this trade dispute into a matter of national pride. Every day, Canadians feel the weight of uncertainty settling on their shoulders like a heavy fog. Carney's promises resonate through the nation. All revenues from tariffs will safeguard workers in Ontario. But as whispers of insecurity swirl, each detail becomes pivotal. Poilievre intensifies the pressure, demanding clarity on Carney's financial undertakings. Could this expose potential conflicts of interest? The stakes rise when Carney responds sharply, asserting that the real threat lies not in his financial past but in jeopardizing Canada's economic future. What's more, Ontario's surging electricity prices jeopardize countless jobs across the border. Americans in Minnesota and Michigan question their resilience, as their reliance on Canadian energy could soon become a liability. They wonder, how will this impact their lives, their livelihoods? And what will happen next? This evolving narrative propels Canada towards a critical juncture, where diplomatic strategies entwine with energy policies. Carney's actions may very well define the future of relations between two neighboring powers. How will he navigate this minefield of tariffs, accusations, and newfound responsibilities? The world watches with bated breath, waiting for the next twist that could reshape not just the countries involved but the entire international stage. Will Carney emerge as a beacon of hope, or will the tides of trade consume him? As we dive deeper into the brewing storm, stay tuned, tension builds, stakes rise, and the question remains, how will Mark Carney confront the challenge ahead? The destiny of North American trade is hanging in the balance, and the epic showdown is just beginning.